And I am here with
Jack Rochester.
one of my fellow authors. So, Jack, what brings you to Woodstock this year?
I'm a member of the Independent Publishers of New England and was invited to come here because I'm an author. I've written several books, and I always love to get out and meet people in public and talk about writing and literature and that sort of thing and be out in nature. And so here I am.
So, did you present? Were you one of the people presenting this year?
No, not this year. No.
Is this your first Woodstock?
It's my first book stop. Yes.
So, what do you think?
I think it's a lot of fun, and it's been a lively day. There's been a lot of traffic, a lot of people here, and the weather's been absolutely ideal. So yeah, it's been a good time. I'd certainly rather be out here under a tent than inside a building somewhere, doing this sort of thing, which I've done as well. So yeah.
So, what did you bring for the readers here?
I brought my first two novels. I've been in publishing my entire life. I started in publishing in 1974. As an editor, I worked for several publishing companies, publishing other people's books, and always had the hope that I might be able to write my own and see a book with my name on the cover at some point in time. And so I had a lively career, 30 years writing nonfiction, and gave it up in 2004 to begin writing fiction, which is what I wanted to do all along. And my first novel was called Wild Blue Yonder. It's a story of a young man, coming of age novel, kind of an intellectual exploration novel of a young man who is in danger of getting drafted into the Vietnam War, joins the Air Force, and goes on an adventure. And then it was followed up a couple years later with the second volume about the same character, whose name is Nathaniel Hawthorne Flowers. And it takes up where he gets out of the Air Force and goes back to California to be with his girlfriend, and with the hope that he might be able to be going to college to study creative writing, holding her hand and walking to class. There's a third volume that will be out later this year, which I just finished. I spent 6 weeks in France writing it. It was a lovely time, a very good place for a writer to be, especially a good place for a writer to write a novel called Anarchy. And that's the third volume in the Nathaniel Hawthorne Flowers series, and that will be out later this year.
So, tell me about the challenges of writing a series character, since we're both doing it.
You know, I didn't start out that way. I was just writing the first novel alone, and it didn't occur to me. But then people who read it started saying, "Hey, Jack, what happens next? What happens next?" And that's, of course, the classic phrase that you want to hear from people when they're reading a book, is what happens next. And I thought, well, gee, what does happen next? And so I started thinking about it, and I asked Nate, I said, "Hey, man, what happens next?" He said, "Well, I get out of the service. My mother wants me to stay in Chicago and get a job. My girlfriend wants me to come back to California and be with her. I wonder which choice I should take." And so that's what led to the second volume. And at the end, as I was writing the end of the second novel, I started thinking about some of his friends and fellow soldiers in the Air Force. And I was wondering what they were doing and if these guys were ever going to meet up again, because one of the big themes in the book is from Bob Dylan's Dream. While riding on a train going west, I fell asleep to take my rest. I dreamed a dream that made me sad about my friends in the first few, about my life and the first few friends I had. And Nate starts wondering about his friends, and one of them writes him a letter. And he's sort of a questionable character. And he says, "Hey, I'm coming to see you." And I said, that is the perfect opening for volume 3 of this series.
Yeah, I find the characters tend to go off on their own and do things that you don't really intend.
They absolutely do. They have a life of their own. One writer said something once about how wonderful it is to live with imaginary people and to write down about their stories. And that's really what it's about. That's really what it's about. The more you control and manipulate, the more you veer from having a true story, an interesting story, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I tend to write organically. I can't use an outline. All an outline is good for is like maybe giving you a guide to the path, but the book you start writing is never the book you finish, is it?
No, it's not. Certainly not. And I do tend to take a little bit more of an analytic approach to writing fiction because I wrote nonfiction for so long. But if I didn't veer, then it wouldn't be as good as it is.
Okay, well, we talked about having you on for a full episode of Book Talk.
Yes.
And but until then, why don't you tell people how they can find out about your books and more about yourself?
Sure. Well, you can find out more about myself on my forthcoming jackboston.com website, which will be up by September 1st. We're just finishing it up now. And you can learn more about me and my other literary activity, which is called The Fictional Cafe. That's at fictionalcafe.com. It is an arts site where I, along with two other baristas, host a coffee shop, an online virtual coffee shop where we publish fiction, nonfiction, fiction, poetry, literature, art, and podcasts from people all over the world. And we invite anybody who's seeing this video to check out fictionalcafe.com and consider becoming a member and submitting their creative work to us for publication. We publish once a month, probably at this point most of the months because we get so much stuff now. So we'd love to see what you're doing.
Okay, Jack Rochester, thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Pleasure to be with you.